What keeps this brake back plate from moving or spinning? There's a little hole drilled in this tool steel axle. This is 01 tool steel in here. It's not heat treated, but it's a pretty good piece of steel, this axle. It's 3/4 of an inch in diameter. There's a set screw in this little bushing here, this hub that's on this brake backing plate. And you tighten that set screw in there. If you loosen it a few turns, you can slide this off of the tool steel axle, little stub axle on here. And where you see this green paint mark on here, a little green arrow I put in there, that tells you where the set screw is, so you don't have any trouble finding it. So after you take the wheel off, then you can take this back plate off if you ever want it off of this axle by loosening this set screw. And I milled this slot in here to make it easier to get the set screw on there, because otherwise you're kind of going at it at an angle. And they got some special Allen wrenches that you can do that with, but I just put that in there. This, of course, is what actuates the brakes, this cam here. And you put the motorcycle cable wire through this adjuster, and it'll go into here, and there's a set screw on it that clamps the cable wire. And of course, it's always best to have some solder on the wire to keep it from getting cut, because when you tighten up that set screw, you can actually cut the wire, because you can get it pretty darn tight with that set screw. So, but this pulls on the brakes, and when that goes like that, it's making this cam move off and prise the brake shoes open. And always when you put the wheels on, make sure the stub axle, you smear a little bit of oil or greaser on there so that it doesn't get rusted, the bearings don't get rusted and stuck to this thing, because otherwise you'd have trouble getting the wheel off. Put the shoes, brake shoes on, you assemble them like this, and then you put this on that stud right there, and this goes on the cam. You see how that works? Cable pulls this, it's going to put them brakes on. There's a little groove on this pin here where they pivot from that keeps it from coming off there. But when you want to take these off, just put a screwdriver or something behind the things and pull them, and those springs will let it pop right off there. You get the shoes off there real easy. Now this down in here is the wheel bearing, the other wheel bearing. This is a bearing here. It's sealed up. You don't ever have to do anything with them. They've got grease inside them. But what I wanted to show you was this spacer. This has to go in there. You can't have two bearings without a spacer in between them. And this spacer is made just to the right width, so it's going to run against that inner race right there. That way when you tighten the nut that holds the wheel on the axle, these two inner races are squeezed together, because if you didn't have that, when you tightened that nut, it would tend to push this whole bearing in there and be putting pressure sideways on the bearing, and you wouldn't want that. So that spacer, I'll show you again what it is real important. These are just aluminum, but that's important. You got to have that in there. Ready to put the wheel on. So we'll put just about 1 or 2 drops of, I'm using 2-stroke oil here, but I put this on the axle, and that's to make it so it don't rust, and it won't be so hard to get the wheel off. If people don't oil them up, they're going to get rusty in the hanger. And now it's ready to offer up the wheel. You don't want to get any on them brake shoes. A small tapped hole right here in this plate. you don't want to put a screw in there that's too long. There's just one screw that goes in there, and that's to hold this horn. And if the screw was too long, it would go through that plate and be pushing on this plastic. There's plastic on each side of these plates where this arm swings back and forth. So you don't want to put a bolt in there that's too long. I don't see why anybody should want to take this off anyways, but anyways, I put a little bit of Loctite on the screw. This horn, it's on a kind of a flexible piece of spring steel, a couple pieces of spring steel there, and it has to be mounted like that, otherwise it won't be near as loud. So you have to let it be a little wiggly on there. And I have it pointed straight down so that people on the ground can hear it. Well, I got the strobe working, and it comes on with the master switch here, and of course I got the horn mounted. The wheels are on it now. It's down on wheels, and I think the suspension's a lot better than the way it was before. And I guess there ain't too much more to tell you. That's about the way it stands tonight. You see that blinking light on there? That has to do with the strobe. You can change the way the strobe blinks. It kind of changes different patterns and flashes kind of randomly. And